By this time you have learned lot of things, I think. Yeah. So many lectures have already over. Today is the last day, na? So, good morning to all of you, and I am going to give this lecture on remanufacturing to sustainable supply chain. Now, you see that this in this slide I have mentioned that a very interesting thing here, that is when oil can be green and gold. See, this was a good article given by actually written by Mr. Subrata Mitra. He is the professor of IIM Calcutta, and there he mentioned that remanufacturing, basically an alternative manufacturing sector, still not formally recognized. And here one thing you see that Indian consumers' awareness of remanufacturing good is very low, and today's my whole discussion will be on this line only, this sentence, that Indian consumers' awareness of remanufacturing good is very low. So, when we are talking about the remanufacturing to sustainable supply chain, then you will find that when we are going for remanufacturing, then product must be returned by the consumers. So, when product must be returned by the consumers, then consumer must be aware of that, and I will show you in a study that how much Indian consumers are aware about actually returning the used product. So, this is the basic outline of my whole discussion, today's discussion. So, before that I am just talking about what is remanufacturing and why actually remanufacturing organization are doing. See that there are basically three reasons for doing your remanufacturing. One is the environmental impact. This is the first reason, that we have a limited resources. So, when limited resource we cannot use it as our wishes. So, that means we have to reuse the product, whatever actually after the end of life or end of use of the product, then we should again we should try to reuse it. Limited resource. Then another problem, that is the problem is related to your waste disposal and landfill, because once the product life is over, then you are normally, what happens, that earlier concept was that you are going to dispose it, and it is actually landfill your waste are going. But this is again against your environment. It is creating lot of problem in the environment. Therefore, this to reduce this thing, actually organizations are going for the remanufacturing. Again, when we are talking about why organizations are going for the remanufacturing, another reason is that the energy saving. If you see that the effort required for producing a remanufactured product is only 20% than the actually original product, only 20%, and the cost will be for the remanufactured product will be around 40 to 60% than your new product. The cost will be with 40 to 60%. The only problem with that, the acceptability of the remanufactured product among the consumers, that whether actually they are how Indian consumers are actually ready to accept this your remanufactured product. This is one important issue, and we will see that how much Indian consumers are ready for that. The other reason for remanufacturing is of course, that is I have mentioned already, that economic thing, that manufacturing cost is one of the major reason for organization going for remanufactured product. Then the other reason is basically another reason I will say, that is your competition among the various organizations, because of which there are many organizations are going for your remanufactured product. So, these are the reasons for which actually the organization are shifting from the manufactured to the your remanufactured product. Now, many original equipment manufacturer are actively your participating in remanufacturing businesses like your Hewlett Packard, then your Kodak, Samsung. There are many examples. I can that when we did this study, then we have done this with respect to the your first the battery manufacturing company, who are very actively actually doing this your remanufacturing, battery manufacturing company when we did this study. Then another one was the your remanufacturing was your which very visible, huh? Cartridge your cartridge, that is the your again another industry where actually lot of actually remanufacturing is done. So, and you are which one you are telling?
Cotton
cloths. So, there are many examples are there. So, now you see that all of you know about your forward supply chain. Forward supply, everybody is aware of forward supply chain. Forward supply chain is basically when the starting from the raw material to the final delivery of product to the customer. So, and that we call it as the your forward supply chain. And when we call the remanufactured product, basically it is nothing but it is a we call as a closed loop supply chain. So, that means your after the your point of use, the product will what will happen that after point of use, then the product will be returned to the manufacturer. And how it will be returned? The return will be actually by the your product acquisition. Acquisition is the actually the collection of the your old product. The product acquisition management itself is a big topic actually. The how to acquire the your reused item, product acquisition. Then the reverse logistics means how you will actually take it back the product to the your original equipment manufacturing company. So, this is the your reverse logistics, and after this reverse logistics you will do the your disassembly of the product, and whatever the after doing this disassembly of the product, then you will go for the your the inspection, and which are usable that you will use, and the other one you will again see the as a scrap you are leaving it. So, this process now you are starting from the your forward to the this one is that is comprising the loop, and that is why you call it as the your closed loop supply chain. Now, if you look at, and also here if you see that here we are saying that the forward flow and the other one that is which is product is going back, that is coming to the original equipment manufacturer, that we are calling it as the your reverse flow, correct. Now, why the product are actually returned? If we look at that reason that why product are returned, that one reason is the because of this your warranty, that during the warranty there is the product is not performing this intended function, then it will be returned to the original equipment manufacturer, or it will be sent back to the your retailer or the distributor or whatever. Then other reason is that why product will be returned, that is because of the your repair, the product will come back to the your organization, or the third may be because of the your end of use of the product, and because of which it will be returned, and the fourth one is the your end of life of the product. So, basically these are the, if we broadly see that these are the four reasons because of which the product are returned. So, there is a you see that end of use and end of life. What is the difference?
End of use means we are looking for some other feature, maybe better feature that will be still can be used for further, but I am not going to use it.
I am not going to use it.
End of life means that will not be used by
anyone. Very perfect, correct. So, that is the your end of use and the end of life. ठीक है, इतना तक this is fine. So, now you see that when the products are returned, that what are the different ways of actually disposing the product. If you look at this picture, then you will find that suppose I am starting from the vendor which is actually supplying the raw material, the vendor may supply the raw material, or vendor may supply the your component for producing the item to the manufacturer, correct. Now, if the vendor is, say that the vendor is supplying the raw material, then this raw material will come to the your fabrication and the assembly. They will do some fabrication operation and then the assembly will be done. Or vendor may directly actually your supply the component and that component will come here and then it will be assembled. Now, once this is done, then this fabrication and after assembly of the product, then it will come to the your, say I am saying that distribution, packaging and the transportation, these things will come into picture. And once this distribution, then it will ultimately it will move to the your consumer. Now, this consumer after using the product, what it will do, say it may first return the product, that some product will go for the your remanufacturing. When it will go to the remanufacturer, that means it will come to the at this point and it will be remanufactured. Otherwise, you see that some of the components that are it is reusable. So, if it is a reusable, then what will happen, it will come here and it will be added here. On the other hand, if it is a refurbishing is to be done, then refurbishing also can be done and added here and then actually made the component and then you are distributing the product again to the your consumer. On the other hand, the other possibility is what? The other possibility of your, it is the your consumer will send this product will go for the your recycling. Recycling means it will come to the here in this position and then it will be recycled. Say your plastic component, what happens that after use of these things you will make it, yeah, what you do? Any plastic, say your plastic goods, the bucket etc. that you are using, that what happens after that it is broken or here, then it will be send it and it will be again make a scrap, actually smaller, it will be broken it on and then it will be actually recycle and make again a plastic, again make a new plastic and then it is used. So, these are the possibilities by which actually this used product can be again reused in our system and to remanufactured and again deliver it to the customer. ठीक है?
Difference between recycling and remanufacturing.
No, recycling is, see the recycling is what happens that see the recycling here, what happens that here recycling means you are completely you just think of the plastic bucket. Your plastic bucket, you are actually after use of it, then it what will happen, you will make the whole plastic component, that is the you will make it again you molten it, then again you do the whole molding will be done and then again the new things will be come out from this. And the remanufacturing also it is a similar one, that here what happens that some of the things may be your what will happen here, may be some operations you may do on this item, some operations you may do on the item. Say suppose further your grinding operation is required, or further suppose that your already a piston is there. Now, this piston again what you can do, already suppose some wear and tear has taken place, now you will refitting it and then suppose you are again using it, or suppose that you are making a hole and then making a little bit further reworking and then you are using it. So, then it will be actually come under the remanufacturing. Repairing type kind of thing. There is a remanufactured and then again you use it as the product. So, this is the between this your remanufacturing, reuse and refurbish and recycle. This we can now. In the first day lecture also I told that we are actually moving from your closed loop to your sustainable supply chain. So, what does it mean basically? See that when initially we started the concept, we started with the idea that our focus was very myopic, that we always try to find a cost minimization solution for the problem, that we will at anyhow we will minimize the cost. That was our objective. Whatever model, that mathematical model etc. also you develop with the intention that these are the total cost and I will minimizing the total cost, without looking at that what will be its impact in the environment. When I am minimizing the cost, but at the same time there may be an adverse impact on your environment, correct. So, at the initial, when we initially started with this myopic point of view. Later on people have realized that no, cost minimization is not the only criteria. When we are minimizing the cost, along with that we should take into consideration the environmental effect. I am minimizing the cost, but there is an adverse impact on the environment, then it is not acceptable solution. That is not acceptable solution. So, then people have taken this into consideration, that we have to, along with the cost minimization, I have to take this environment into picture. So, that is why this your the cost minimization, then along with the your carbon emission should also be minimized, or like that. This thing has come into picture. Then slowly, then again the people have realized that no, along with this environmental impact, we also there is another dimension, and that dimension is the your social dimension, and that social dimension also we have taken into consideration, that we are the people, if we exhaust the all resources, then what is going to happen to the future generation? We cannot do that thing. So, we must think of our future generation also. So, that is why your the remanufacturing or your recycling of the product comes into picture, that how much minimum utilization of the resources, so that we can keep some resources for our future generation. So that we can keep our, because these natural resources are limited, everything you cannot consume. You must think of that your future generation also must have something, so that they can use it, and therefore this sustainability concept has come into picture. So, that means you must understand that cost one factor, then the environment has come into this dimension, then another dimension added is your social dimension, and these three dimensions together actually make your supply chain as your sustainable. That is your sustainable supply chain, that is what we are talking about, correct. So, this is what I am talking it here, that sustainable supply chain explicitly integrates the social and environmental dimension with your economic consideration and focused on forward and reverse supply chain. So, you are adding these two dimensions, environment and your social dimension. So, this now every company is now under pressure, that the global companies such as your IBM, HP or Xerox, they have rapidly integrated your sustainability issue in their supply chain, taking the necessary environmental steps including design of reusable product. So, everybody is now concerned about that, yes, we cannot, everything we cannot consume, we must have to take care of my future generation, and therefore, accordingly that we have to try to develop the product in such a fashion that there is a minimum utilization of these resources, or those resources can be reused. So, this you see that when you talk about your sustainable supply chain, then sustainable supply chain will start from the different phases in which sustainable solution need to be incorporated for improving your sustainable value. Means, when we talk about the sustainable, now it is sustainable, it will start from your design stage itself. Design stage itself, that when we are designing the product, at that time itself we will think of that, okay, that whether this actually if minimum material can be used for producing the item, or this type of material can be used for producing this item. So, this thing will be taken into consideration at the design stage itself. So, that there will be this sustainable point come into picture. Then similarly, you will, while you are purchasing, then also your sustainability thing will come into picture. How? कैसे आएंगे? How this will come into picture? Suppose your sustainable purchasing. What is the meaning of sustainable purchasing?
That products will be environment friendly. The raw materials.
and
not like use and throw. We have to use it again and again. Like that, if I am going
this
to purchase a pen, I will prefer not to buy a 2 rupees pen so that I can use it and throw it like that.
yeah, that is correct here. And purchasing, see, suppose how you can make your supply chain sustainable in terms of purchasing. Say suppose the supplier who is not actually environmentally conscious or the environmental friendly, so that from that supply you are not going to purchase it actually, who are not following your environmental rules or regulations or here. So those supplier you are not going to use for purchasing, you are not going to use those things. That is one possibility. And the other possibility is that when you are purchasing, then you are giving the guidelines to the supplier that you have to use this method or you have to use this kind of technique for actually producing the item, so that you can make your purchasing process your sustainable. This is one. Then the other one is your production. The production also the same kind of thing, that while you are doing the production process, that you will try to select that kind of production process which is your sustainable. Earlier what happens, that people will use a certain production process and then they will find that, oh, there is a lot of carbon emission from this, how I should minimize this carbon emission, correct. That is your what? That is your post analysis actually, post analysis, because you are once you have taken a production process and then using that production process you have found that there is a lot of carbon emission and it is going on. Now, when you are making a sustainable production system, then at the beginning itself you will select that type of production system, that which will actually production process which will actually have a minimum say carbon emission. I am trying to give you an example that how actually it can be done, correct. So, I am trying to incorporate that in your production process, and thereby I am making your supply chain sustainable. So, you have seen that from the design stage to purchasing to the production, and then your transport and the storage. Similarly, for the transport and storage, this is another very critical area which is actually contributing maximum to your environmental degradation. So, here you will try to transport in such a fashion that your minimum the damage taken place in your environment, and thereby you are incorporating in your sustainability in your supply chain. So, this is a complete life cycle approach, that is what is called as your complete life cycle approach of the product, that will make your sustainable. ठीक है इतना तक. Now, what are the actually obstacle for your sustainable supply chain? There are basically two categories of obstacle we say that one is your external and the other one is your internal, which is actually preventing to make your system the sustainable supply chain. External obstacles are that in our systems that the regulations are not very rigorous in terms of your corporate environmental and social objective. That is one reason. That is this is under the external category, that your rules and regulations still in India it is not very firm, that is to make a system sustainable. Except that say for example the battery industry, where we actually did this study. So, the battery for battery there is a rule, government has a rule. Kya rule hai? What is that rule? So, there is the battery manufacturing company has to reuse the battery, that is the battery from your market. They have to take it back the battery and reuse it. There is a rule is there, but it is not for all other products. Similarly, the other one is your external obstacle, that the consumers are not very sensitive or aware of the sustainable aspect. This is where I am again and again I am emphasizing that later on I will show you that what is how much is still awareness about the Indian consumers. So, these consumers are not very sensitive or aware of your sustainable aspect. If consumers are not aware, then actually we cannot achieve your sustainability in supply chain. Now, the other obstacle, that is with respect to your internal obstacle. What are the internal? Say that your lack of measurement indicators and reliable your technological tools to evaluate environmental and social performance in relation to your economic performance. This is one reason, that we do not have actually a measurement indicator, which can say that your reliable and technology tool to evaluate your environmental and your social performance in relation to your economic performance. कितना है इसका? इसका there is no measurement tool. This is a one major obstacle actually. Then we have a lack of dissemination of your sustainable approaches within your supply chain. Then finally, this is obviously everywhere it is there, that is the anything new you want to introduce, you cannot introduce because there is a resistance to change and your lack of capacities and key skills in the environmental and the social domain. This is your problem with respect to your to make a system sustainable. Now, in this we have many more actually obstacles. The other obstacles that we can have a tremendous application in your theory and the practice of your sustainable supply chain. That among them, I am actually highlighting one issue. I have highlighting that issue. Which one is that customer perceptions towards returning the used product. That is a one most important issue. Then apart from that, let's say the willingness to pay for the new versus remanufactured product. This is also another important issue. That is how much actually price that someone wants to pay for the remanufactured product versus your new product. Then the other one is your advertising and the promotion strategies for your green products. Then your sell for components and your incentive, then your integration of forward and the reverse channel and your product line design decision. These are some of the obstacle which is related to your sustainable supply chain. Now, how we are going to this approach to tackle this situation? What are the various approaches there? See that the companies should promote on the organization culture and that support an environmental and the social approach. Now, investment in R&D and development of the highly qualified skilled workforce to generate innovative ideas all along the logistics chains. For example, your drone logistics, by which you can actually suppose delivering the product, you can reduce the carbon emission and you can go for the congestion or whatever these things are there that you can avoid by using suppose the drone logistics. This is a one kind of example. And similarly, your decisive commitment from the your management to promote the ethical and the environmental values. This is again an important issue, that these are the things Then other important issue, that is you can encourage that is your employees awareness, that you encourage staff to adopt your sustainable approach, that how that sustainability how you can adopt in your organization. Then on external level, you are improving relation between stakeholders by developing a spirit of collaboration and common solution for long term. Then government should encourage to develop sustainable supply chain by integrating your financial incentive and the regulatory standards. This is again a very important part. That is that I have already mentioned, that one possibility of going for your sustainable supply chain, remanufacturing, then your sustainable supply chain, you need the government initiative. And government initiative will be in what way? That one way may be your providing incentive, that they may provide some financial incentive if you return the product. And suppose the company is using the reuse product or remanufacture the product, then company will get some kind of subsidy from the government. Company will get some kind of subsidy from the government. This is the one way that how you can make an organization actually a sustainable supply chain. And the other one is your obviously that is your regulatory standards, that you can enforce the law, that after using the product you have to, that company has to collect that used product. That is your enforcing the law. These two possibilities are there. The other one is the you are giving incentive, and other one is the you are enforcing the law. We have done some work on this actually, that how financial incentive can be provided for making your actually a sustainable supply chain. And also we have done with the advertising, how advertising is affecting the your for remanufactured product. A company wants to actually go for the remanufactured product, and how advertising is going to impact on it. We have done work on this area, you can see. Now coming to our the main study, that is the here see that again I am telling that to understand the perception of Indian consumers' willingness to return the used product to move for your sustainable supply chain. This is the idea, that how much actually Indian consumers are willing to return the product. So, then only we can go for your sustainable supply chain. So, this we are calling it as a study on this. This work is basically a paper that we have published in the your Journal of Cleaner Production, myself and S.K. Jena, that is the in 2017. That is the, and the title of this paper was the measurement of consumers return intention index towards returning the used product. So, this basically we are trying to measure the your consumer return intention index towards the your returning the used product. How much their Indian consumers are ready to do these things. So, as I already mentioned to you that earlier manufacturing industry has been mostly confined to extracting raw material from the earth and manufacturing them, and manufacturing them into product, and then actually disposing them after use, they are disposing them into the your landfill. But later on people have realized that no, it is not a good solution. We have to think something else, and therefore, we have to go for the suppose the remanufactured product. So, today this approach is not sustainable because the rising concern of people for clean and safe environment in the present and for the your future. So, this we cannot go for. So, we have to, people are now more aware of this your regarding the environment and yeah. Now, therefore, companies are focusing on the your remanufacturing using the your closed loop supply chain, and for remanufacturing the consumers have to return, and for remanufacturing the first requirement is the your returning of the your used product. And how much we are actually ready to return the product. Are we really geared up to that level that we are so much of concern that we are that yes, we have to return this product. Are we really concerned about this thing? So, this is the actually the outcome of this study is regarding this one, that for manufacturing consumer have to return their end of life products. Thus, the aim of this study is to identify the return intention of the Indian consumers, that what is the return intention of the Indian consumers, that we try to actually identify. It's not a thick, this is fine up to this point. So, for this study, that what we have done, that for doing this study we have a detailed literature review that shows that without knowing the your consumer return intention for returning the used product, it is very difficult to maintain a remanufacturing process in today's competitive business environment. This is first thing, that if I am going to remanufacture, the company is thinking of the your remanufacturing the product, then they must have to know that what is the actually how much quantity is returning back to the market. If sufficient quantity of market is sufficient quantity of used product is not coming into the market, then you cannot sustain, you cannot do that market. So, sufficient number of quantity has to come back into the market, and that must be acquired in a proper way, and then actually to go to the for the your again to the for remanufacturing. So, this is also that this literature we have seen that is the it is difficult to maintain this manufacturing process. So, it is important to examine the impact of your the perceived benefit, the social awareness, the market characteristics, then post purchase behavior, then perceived risk, then return product knowledge and subjective norm on consumer attitude and intention about the return of the used product. So, we have identified some of the factors that which are the actually the items which will actually impact the consumer's attitude and intention about the return of the used product. Kya hai? What are the items? So, these are the, we have identified that perceived benefit, if the how the consumer actually thinking of that, what benefit I am going to get if I am returning it. While I am returning the product, what is the perceived benefit I am going to acquire out of it, or how much actually, whether the consumer is socially aware about these things for returning the product, social awareness. Then the market characteristic, how is the your market characteristic about the product, or your post purchase behavior. So, post purchase behavior means, say somebody is purchasing a remanufactured product and then how actually it is, how it is actually giving the service. So, this also I will be interested only then purchasing a remanufactured product if I see that it is as good as like the your new product. Otherwise, I will not purchase the your remanufactured product. Normally, every people have a some kind of reluctance to the purchasing of the your remanufactured product. Suppose you are tomorrow you are going for purchasing a car, then immediately suppose they say that this is a remanufactured car and this is a new car, then immediately people will have a that I will go for the suppose the new car. But normally people will have a that kind of mentality, many people will have a that kind of mentality. So, until and unless you are sure that remanufactured performance of the remanufactured product is as good as that of the new product, then only people will go for that, okay, then I can go for the your remanufactured product. So, we identified these are the some of these characteristics, that is the your perceived, then perceived risk, then return product knowledge, and these are that on the your consumer's attitude and the intention about the your return of the used product. The consumer return intention index measurement becomes very important in the your remanufacturing process. Whether it is because remanufacturing of the your battery, remanufacturing of the cartridge, remanufacturing of the your other electronic goods, whatever may be. If sufficient quantity is not coming into the market, then no remanufacturing process will be successful. And for that, whether actually consumers are ready or not. So, here actually what are the research questions that we try to develop and try to address. Actually, the research question that what is the relationship between various factors with respect to the your return intention. That is the first we try to answer this research question, that we identify that what are the research question, that what is the relationship between various factors with the return intention. Then which are the most important factors actually that motivate your consumer to return their used product. Which are the factors actually, which are the dominating factors which actually for that consumer will be interested to return the used product. Then what is the most important factor that impact your on the return on intention. And finally, is that what is the current level of consumers return intention index. We are trying to develop an index, that what is the to measure that what is the your current return intention index of the Indian consumers. That we tried, that what is the status of this. To address this question, we designed a questionnaire and survey was conducted basically for this one. And what was the methodology of this study? The methodology that those who have gone through this kind of study, they know that what is the methodology adopted for this kind of study. This is a structured methodology for doing this kind of study. The first, that is what will be you make your relevant literature review, and once you make the relevant literature review, then you will identify the factors and what are your constructs. Okay. So, once you find out this identification of the factors, this identification of factors normally you find out from the available literature. Also, you can discuss with the other people related area, and from there also you can find out the factors. Then your development of the based on this identification of the factors, then you will develop your questionnaire survey. And this questionnaire survey, that is your amendment in the questionnaire with the help of your respondents and the reviewers, because when you are developing the questionnaire, then you will go through a number of stages. You will first make a pilot study, and then from the pilot study you will take feedback from some limited group of people, and then based on their feedback you will revise the questionnaire and then again you will send it back. This process actually goes on 2-3 times, and then after that you actually make the final questionnaire. And then then what you will do, you will sending this questionnaire to your respondent via this your online or the offline, that is what you do, and separate your incompleted data from and receive the responses. Then what you will do, that because you will receive, suppose you are sending the questionnaire to different group of people, and after that when you will receive the respondents, then you will identify that how many are actually completed respondents and how many are not completed respondents. So, you will, or useful respondents actually. So, you will take those useful respondents and then you will try to analyze it. So, separate your incomplete data from your received respondents, and then you make this your descriptive analysis, you will do that thing, and then you make your testing conceptual model using your structural equation modeling, or the structural equation modeling you can use, or your PLS you can use that. From there you can develop the structural model, and from the structural model we can find out the result. This is your standard procedure of doing this kind of study. Those who have already done PhD, those who are going for PhD, they can see that this is the method how we do your qualitative analysis actually, or empirical study. So, this your the conceptual background and the hypothesis development. This model was we find develop that what are the actually the RPKW, that is the PB, that is your perceived benefit, that how perceived benefit actually affecting your RI, that is your return intention. Then your social awareness, that is how it is affecting your return intention. So, social awareness has a positive impact with the return intention, and we are developing this hypothesis, and then with the available data that we will test that whether this hypothesis actually that the hypothesis is correct or not. Initially we first make this conceptual model, and from there we develop that your assay has a direct impact, positive impact with the RI. Similarly, your RPKW means your product knowledge, return product knowledge. Similarly, that your SN appear, all these things that I have already mentioned in the earlier slide. So, this has a whether this is a positive impact or not. See, that is the, so here we have, on the basis of this thing we develop this, suppose the 10 hypotheses we have developed, and they based on this discussion following hypothesis are considered. Say first your RA, return attitude towards your used electronic product positively influences your return intention. That is the hypothesis we have framed. We have framed this hypothesis, and then with the data then we will test it, that whether this hypothesis is correct or not. Similarly, your that SN has a positively influences your return intention of an Indian consumer for returning their used product. Then perceived behavior positively influences your return intention of the consumer towards the returning the used product. Then PB has a positively influences your RA of your consumers to return the used product. Similarly, SA has your positively influences the RI of the return intention of your consumer. So, first I have all this from this conceptual model, from the previous conceptual, from this conceptual model you can see that the previous conceptual model, that is under here. From here we have developed these 10 hypotheses. We have developed these 10 hypotheses. So, positively influences the RI of the consumer, MC positively influences the RI of the consumer, then your PPB has a positively influences the RI of the used product, then PR has a negative impact on the RI of the consumer towards returning the used product, and your PR has a negative impact on RI of the consumer in returning the used product. Correct? Okay. Now, after that what we have done this, when we are doing this your questionnaire design, Then in the questionnaire was divided into the two parts. The first was the with respect to the consumer information and the opinion of the respondent on the various core issues. So, what we have done, say this one was a 7-point Likert scale was used for Likert scale, and the Likert scale, how many of you know about the Likert scale? Yeah. So, here also we have used the Likert scale with a scale of rating of from the 1 to 7, and then we are from the strongly disagree to the your strongly agree. This and then pilot, and the first we made actually pilot study that I said that I will make a first pilot study with the we did with the your battery manufacturing company, then we did with the your cartridge manufacturing company, and then we actually do it with the 3 national technical institute person from the 3 national technical institute. So, this when we make this study, then the questionnaires were actually sent to total 800 students and the 400 other people, that is the job and the non-job holders. Total this questionnaire was sent, and we received that total 358 respondents, that was almost 29.83%. This much of 29% respondents we received, and out of which some responses were eliminated because of the error in fulfilling the your questionnaire, and ultimately the effective sample size was 329, almost 28%. 28% respondents was actually it was acceptable, and 28% is a very, in this kind of study 28% is a good sample size, good sample. Okay. And this, if you see that how was the actually the percentage of respondents when where somebody about the remanufacturing not hard, 42% people say that not hard, and 58% among these respondents, that 58% say they heard about the remanufacturing and the return of the products, and not return 81%. Then similarly, when we are taking this to with the percentage of the respondents, that is the other student community, then this is the other community 52%, then the academic was 3%, and the other rest of was actually the student respondent. Those are the actually the classification of the respondents. Now, from that we developed this structural equation analysis model. This is those who are acquainted with the SEM model, then you can understand that this SEM, I am just, that is why I am keeping it at the minimum level, so that you can just, I am just showing it that how the structural equation modeling has been developed, and then what is the loading factor with each of the factors that we have shown it here. And structural equation modeling, how many of you have done? Any of you have done? You are doing that, okay. So, this structural equation modeling we did, and from there if you see that the hypothesis 1, the hypothesis 1 was not supported, then hypothesis 2 was not supported, hypothesis 4 was not supported, and hypothesis 9 was not supported. Out of these 10 hypotheses that what we have developed, out of these 10 hypotheses only 6 were supported and the 4 were not supported. That means, what initially with our hypothesis was that there was a positive impact of the suppose the perceived behavior with the return intention, but later on when we did this analysis, then we found that this is actually not correct. That was so out of these 6 hypotheses, out of these 10 hypotheses, so 6 hypotheses were actually found that it is supported by our data, and the other rest 4 are not supported by the data. So, 4 were. So, with this, then what we do, that we develop this the measurement of return intention index. Then we are trying to find out the return intention index. What is the return intention index? And for finding out the return intention index, we use this formula developed by your Anderson and the Fornell. They have developed a formula for determining the index, and for here in our case we use that formula for finding out the return intention index of the Indian consumers. And when we in this return intention index formula, all this your R is what the range of the scale it is showing, n is the your number of construct, how many constructs were there, and the Sj is the weight of the measurement variable, and Z is the construct. This is the inside of the study that I am not discussing right now. So, using this formula, then finally from our data we found that this the overall value of this your return intention index of the Indian consumer came around the 69.90 and around your 70 in the 1 to 100 scale actually. $70 is good. 70 is good means basically what happens here, because we are most of the your dominating respondents were from the student category or the those who are actually aware of aware about your environmental impact and the return of the product. So, that is why actually this has shown a good result, because that was a dominating here. If you see that this economy, this is a good percentage, and here. Now, so what are the discussions and the managerial implication of this study? So, what we have found that some of the measures, that is suppose you are giving the discount and you are giving the exchange offer, suppose you are giving the warranty or incentive, and SF are your emerge as the most positive factor in the return intention. If you are providing this thing, then this will be the actually the return intention will be improved. Suppose I am taking the product back to the retailer, then retailer is ready to give some discount. Suppose in the big bazaar, when you are going to take a used product and then they are giving some coupon to you. So, there is an incentive. So, that is why you are compelled to take the product to the big bazaar say. So, that is your either discount in the form of discount or the exchange or the warranty and the incentive, and these are the emerge as your positive factors for your return intention. If consumer get good service facility in new product by giving used product, then they will be motivated to return their used product. This is the another findings that we have found out. Then another important factor that we have found out, that education of the consumer plays an important role actually returning the product. So, education, incentive and advertisement are the biggest source for returning of the used product. So, this from our analysis it is showing that is your education, incentive and advertisement also playing a major role in your returning of your used product. And the time risk, quality risk, performance risk and social risk are all emerge as your negative indicator in your return intention. So, people have they based on the performance, because people will think that the remanufactured product may not perform as your original product, and therefore, they may not be actually interested for returning the product and go for it. So, that is why that it has emerged as your negative indicators in the return intention. Now, when we are coming to your practical implications, the government and the original equipment manufacturer, remanufacturer should work together to build a positive image on the consumer for returning the used product. This is the most important part, that company and the government both come together for actually making your remanufacturing successful. That and then they together, that is the how they can do it for returning the used product by informing your social benefit, that what are the social benefit associated with the. So, government must have come with this kind of advertisement that these are the social benefits are there, so that you return the product, otherwise you are actually landfill and then it is going to actually degrade the environment. So, this is one, the social benefit. Then your economic advantages of returning the used product, another part is that economic advantage of the returning the used product. When you are returning your used battery of your car, then they are giving you some money, because when suppose your new battery is the 5,000 rupees, then when they will take it your old battery, then they will immediately deduct suppose the 1,000 rupees, they will 4,000 rupees you have to pay for your new product. Now, the other one, that is your government should speed up the process of your imposing the strong laws, that is the rule that like the for the battery, the kind of the rule that government has imposed, the similar kind of strong rule is required, so that the people will be interested to return the used product, and thereby improving the environment, thereby making the your supply chain sustainable. The original equipment manufacturer and government together actually should develop a green marketing strategy and publish the environmental friendly application of the your used product. These are some of the practical measures. Now, what are the contribution and key findings of this study? The contribution or the key findings of this study, that we identified your various dimension of return intention and applied this theoretical analysis in the Indian context. That is, in Indian context there was no earlier study that what has happened to your as far as the returning of the used product, and you identified these various dimension of return intention, and we developed a scale for measuring this your return intention of the your consumers, and proposed a method of computing the your return intention index. And the overall value of this return intention index is your 69.9, which indicates that consumers are ready to return their used product. ठीक है, okay. What are the future direction of this research? For this, you will see that how is your that sustainable supply chain management produces favorably yield across the your triple bottom line dimension, and also explore when these yields are not favorable. This is the one possible question that which the researcher can address. Then what are the your measure compliance strategies or levers firms have at their disposal to comply with a cap and trade regime? Cap and trade regime is basically related with the your kya? With the carbon emission. Then your how can firms determine the value of your carbon permit and internalized that value in making the your investment decision? This is also another important research question which actually researchers must have to address. This is because this is not addressed till now. Then again, the how rule and policy of government impacts on the your SSCM, that is the your sustainable supply chain management. Then another issue that is the researcher can think of, that is the your how do the classical marketing decisions such as your pricing and the segmentation interfaces with the technology selection and the your sustainable supply chain decision. This is also another question that is the researcher can address. These questions are still it is not answered. So, researcher can go for answering these questions. So, with this is the end of my lecture. So, you can ask some questions, we can have a discussion.
Sir, here what is the period dimensions in the last future research direction?
Triple bottom line. So, kya?
Slide conceptual background and hypothesis development. I can see perceived benefit outside the box, or is there any meaning?
Perceive, just a minute.
Slide mentioning conceptual background and hypothesis development.
The conceptual background and hypothesis development.
Let's start. It's okay. Okay, so welcome you to this particular lecture session. Today, this is the last, the pre-lunch session, and the topic of the discussion is evaluation of life cycle cost by sustainability based approach. Okay. How many of you are aware of the term called life cycle costing? You have heard the term called costing? isn't it? Costing everyone. But then again, say, have you heard the term called product life cycle? Okay, or the technology life cycle, right? So that means on the process life cycle, right? Now, usually what happens that whenever we start discussing environmental management issues vis-a-vis a manufacturing system. So, the manufacturing system consists of a number of processes. Okay. So, a process is to be designed, a process is to be defined very clearly, right? Means the boundary line of a process you must know, right? Whether it is a CNC machine or it is a pre-treatment plant or heat treatment or say the painting booth, right? So, these are the processes. The processes could be the machining, metal machining, it could be sheet metal work, it could be typical assembly, it could be welding, and it could be also fabrication. You are aware of these terms and terminologies. These are processes. Now, what is the basic assumption? Assumption is when you run the process, there is every chance that you will be creating wastes of different kinds, okay? Either in small quantity or large quantity, but there will be some wastes. And the next assumption is when you create these wastes, obviously there is a high chance that these wastes will be affecting the natural environment. Okay. So, this effect should be measured, and you have to predict that in course of time in future related to a particular process, this effect will remains at the same level or at different levels, right. So, this prediction you must make, and obviously that means not only the short term effect, but the long term effect you must be aware of. Otherwise, do not call it an environmental study. Now, whenever we say it is a long term impact, you have no other alternative but to go for evaluation of life cycle cost. Whatever activities you do, there is a cost associated with it. This is a basic assumption. More number of activities you carry out, so okay. So, more elements of costs you have to bear. This is the basic assumption. Now, there could be cases where less number of activities you carry out, less number of processes, but the cost is enormous, right. There could be other cases where that more number of activities you carry out with respect to a particular process, but the cost may be less, right. So, as such there is no formulation, there is no theory behind it. So, obviously any life cycle cost exercise is an empirical study, is it okay? That means in front of you there must be few processes or one process, and with respect to that process you have to develop this life cycle cost, clear. So, whenever someone carries an exercise on environmental issues, the life cycle cost determination is a part and parcel of the whole exercise. So, what is the objective? Objective is determination of performance indicators. Before you go for measuring the performance, so you should be aware of first the performance criteria, and then related performance indicators for sustainable material processing and resource utilization. The second important the assumptions we have, any process you talk about, how do you look at the process? There will be a processing of materials either in one stage or 100 stages has to be there, and it's essentially process means the transformation process. Okay, that means at various stages you transform the basic raw material as per the drawing, as per the engineering specifications, and ultimately you come up with a finished good. Okay, as per the specifications, as per the engineering drawings. Okay. So, the material processing is a part and parcel. Can you name any single process which does not have material processing? Not possible, because the basic entity which you look at, the product, is essentially a material in different forms and sizes, okay, and the shapes. Finding out the performance indicators for maintaining process sustainability, life cycle assessment using attributes based, that is sustainability based approaches. So, how do you measure, right, in specific terms? First one is whenever you talk about environmental aspect, that means the resource utilization, physical resource utilization. That becomes your priority exercise. Now, under resource category, you have the material and you have also the packaging material, right. If you look at the elements of the quality loop, what do you find? That there is the production, right, and after the production is over, what you have is the final inspection, testing and examination, right. Now, whenever you are aware of environmental problems, can you include some performance measures, okay, at the final inspection, test and examination stage? Is it okay? So, that is to be considered. And the next step is obviously, by the packaging and storing, right, and there are hundreds of packaging materials, right, and without selecting appropriate packaging materials, it becomes impossible for you to retain the value of the product during the transit before it is delivered to the customer premises. So, there is a lot of research on what kind of material you select for packaging. Okay. It itself is a discipline, and depending on the type of product, okay, for the chemicals, what could be the packaging, for the the medicines of different types, what could be the packaging, and all this plays very important role, retaining the value. But then again, when the product is delivered, what do you do with the packaging materials? Getting my point? It's becoming waste. So, can it be reused? Can it be recycled? So, whenever someone talks about recycling, there is an inbuilt system, or the reuse is a part of inbuilt system. Immediately you assume he or she is aware of the environmental problems. Getting my point? So, material used per unit of product is very important. Okay. So, when you talk about the product quality improvement, or say product design improvement, it's clear. What you find that this is an important indicator. Today, what has happened for many products, particularly in the electronics categories, one is the concept is miniaturization of the product, small, day by day. What is happening? That the product is becoming smaller and smaller. Okay. There are many reasons for this one. One is the integrated approach, right? Integrated approach. That means many sorts of functions you can do. Okay. That is not possible previous design. So, new design means more number of features, and new design means that miniaturization, smaller size, and if the size is smaller, obviously the material consumption will be less. This concept is directly coming from the conservation of materials concept. Getting my point? So, you have the limited amount of resources. Is it clear? So, it is to be used definitely, otherwise you cannot create the product, but make sure the minimum amount of money or the material you are using, and you are getting the same function or more number of features. Non-renewable material used per unit of product. You know what is a non-renewable one? Is it okay? Like the oil, many others in fact. So you need to have, you need to categorize them, whether it is renewable or non-renewable. Okay. If you start using non-renewable resources or the materials and you don't care for it, it goes on increasing, it cannot maintain it. So you can create a system which is not at all sustainable. Today it is running, tomorrow it is bound to fail. The whole system collapses. There are many such examples, I am telling you. Material saved per unit of product. Obviously, that means whenever you you carry out an exercise for say the quality improvement or say the design improvement, make sure with lesser amount of say the materials, whether you can propose a better quality or better design product or not. That is the challenge. Okay. So, today in the design department, all the engineers they are aware of it. Getting my point? If you find that even the designers are not aware of it, right, then it's a very unfortunate situation. Getting my point? Recycled material used per unit of product. I have mentioned the recycling and all. So, specifically what you have to do, that means if you want to carry out such an exercise, you have to create a document or database, and first you identify that these are the criteria, these are the indicators, and now you have to quantify them with the time period, over the time periods. These are all temporal data. You know what is the temporal data? Means it's a time varying. Okay, today you have this data. If you do not have sufficient control, if it remains constant, fine, it is acceptable level. So that is the challenge. I mean, always the decreasing trend is better, and increasing trend for obvious reason not acceptable. Okay, but depending on the criterion, attributes, you say the increasing trend is better or decreasing trend is better. Getting my point? Like for recycled material used, if it increases, obviously it is you are heading towards a better situation. Then comes the packaging material. Then the last one against material, that is the toxic material used in process per unit of product. The toxic material. I visited a copper plant, which is around 2,500-year-old copper plant. The mining activities those days, means before Christ, I visited, and in the museum they depict. Even today, the copper mining goes on. The same place, almost the same place. So they have a museum. That what was it some 1,000 years back? What was it some 2,000 years back? And we look at those pictures. Along with those mines, you also see the conditions of the people, mostly the workers, and at certain point in time in the history, these workers were made slaves. Initially started with the workers, later on the workers were removed and the slaves were brought in. Okay, that's a part of the history, human history in fact. and is look at their health. Okay, health status. All are sick persons right, today. So it's a direct environmental problem. There are many such, in fact, and the effect of mercury, effect of many other the toxic materials for thousands of years. Right, we never used to bother about this effect. Who bothers about the occupational health? You are a slave. You started with this one. Many such processes, right? And not only just 1 year or few years, hundreds of years. So that's the root. So you never bothered about even the working conditions. Okay, it's a truly, true sense, it's a hell. And the occupational health. Okay, those days. For the last 100 years or so, not even 100 years, in many countries, maybe just 50 years or even 40 years, we are talking about the occupational health. So, over the years, okay, you have accumulated the problems, right? There are hundreds of roots texts. This is not that easy. You go to a underground mine and look at what conditions they are working. Now you come back to your the design department. You identify the problem, you quantify the problem, and then you go for the solution. So the problem is very complex. Getting my point. So I have seen, and today we have stringent regulations on this, right? That means if you cannot maintain the occupational health or work environment, your license will be cancelled. As simple as that. There is a general rule. So the toxic material used, like say the sulfur, even in many parts of India we will find, right? I don't want to name them, but it's a fact. So as a researcher, as I have been telling you, you must make a field visit. Otherwise, there is no meaning of carrying out environmental study, okay, impact assessment. So the toxic material you have to identify. As far as packaging material is concerned, percentage of plastic material used for packaging. This everybody has become aware of. Is it okay? So whether this material is sustainable or not, definitely not sustainable in the present form. So obviously the scientists have to do further research so that it becomes usable, and you say that it is usable today, and in future also its usability is very high. Usability, that's the term, is usability. Is it okay? You have the functional value, definitely. You have the aesthetic value for the product. You have the cost value, and you have also what? Exchange value for any product. Now here we are focusing on the cost value. At what cost you are getting this function, right? So any product, whether it's a branded one, whether it's a Kanjivaram silk or say Varanasi silk, so it is your duty to see the work environment in which these products are being manufactured. It's clear. Surprisingly, what you will find that the products which are brands for 1000 years, 2000 years, these products are being offered. Surprisingly, when you visit their plant, you will find that the work environment they have created, is it okay, over the years, 100 years, 200 years, but there is a concern about, say, human environmental interaction, right? So these people, that means wise people, wise, not knowledgeable, with wisdom. So they created the situation. It's so, there are hundreds such cases in fact. There are worst cases, there are also very good cases in the history, right, when they were aware of. Similarly, suppose that it's a environmental friendly. That means even 200 years ago, 300 years ago, the people are aware of this one. They never neglected the environment. Is it okay? and that may be the reason that this product is continuing for thousands of years. Getting my point? Percentage savings of packaging material, same way. Percentage of recycled material used for packaging, recycled, same. And percentage of renewable material used for packaging. So, this way you need to identify those what you can say like performance indicators, right. As far as energy is concerned, types of energy used for production, that classification you must have. Renewable energy percentage by volume, renewable energy percentage by type. Okay, this is a standard format. Okay, you will get all these details in fact. Then the steam energy purchased per year, direct renewable energy consumption per unit of product, energy wasted per unit of product. Okay, how to get this value? What sort of systems you must have? Getting my point? Percentage of released energy directly to the open environment. Just I am telling you, this is the starting point. Unless and until you have the data. So, how do you define the problem in quantitative terms? Getting my point? That means as a researcher what you need to do, you need to define the problem in quantitative terms. So, your starting point is this. That means initially you look through all these details and then you take one particular area or the process or a plant, and this plant, when you look at the plant, okay, the seeing is believing. Immediately you conclude, hey, it has to be a bad workplace as far as the environment is concerned. Is it okay? You don't need to collect data. There are hundreds of cases. Even the child can tell you, sir, this is is not a good environment. Okay, then you say that what has gone wrong, what is the reason? So, suppose you take 10 such cases in 10 specific industries, that way create a survey. So, you will find the causes may be industry specific, the causes may be the person specific, the causes may be the owner specific, owners, okay, and the causes may be attitude specific, right. Okay, so these ideas you have, you won't make any comment, you just observe. Getting my point? Don't make a statement, just silently observe, and your data will speak, your information, your analysis will speak for itself. That should be your attitude. No argument. Is it okay? The pain is mightier than sword. Okay. As far as water contamination is concerned, we have defined the contamination, the term we have used yesterday. Percentage of surface water consumed by volume is a serious issue. Okay. Percentage of groundwater consumed by volume, percentage of with respect to a particular process, mind it. Is it okay? Percentage of municipal water consumed by volume, water discharged, water consumed ratio, water discharged. That means it is essentially contaminated water you are discharging. Okay. Amount of water reused without any processing possible. Is it okay? In many cases it is possible. And amount of water reused after processing. Is it okay? So, once we came across such a problem, in fact, very near, there is a plant over here in Kharagpur on the highways, and we asked for this data. Okay, then you will find the kind of problem they have. Getting the data is very difficult. Is it okay? In fact, the management also, do not know how to get the data. It is not that easy. So, this is also one of the reasons. The person is really interested, but he is at a loss what to do. Okay, how to get this data, right? So, this problem invariably will find. Okay. So, there could be some direct means of collecting data, there could be some indirect means. So, you start with some secondary sources of data, and then as the time passes, if you are fortunate or you try to get this data from the primary source. Is it okay? So, initially the primary, the secondary sources, the tertiary sources, the data may not be that reliable, let it be, but at least it is a starting point. The types of data you will come to know at least. So, process sustainability framework, this is the framework. So, what is this one? First one is the resource extraction, right, resource extraction, then material processing, then is the ore collect, then the materials, bunker analysis, materials balance equation, is it okay, mass balance equation. You said that to produce, I will get this molten metal, say 1 ton from 1 heat. Okay, these are the terms we heat. So, how much will be your material content in different forms? What are these materials, input materials, and then I will have a proper mix, proportionality, bunker analysis, and then it will be fed to, say, through the furnace, right? Okay, the furnace will be there in fact, and then it will be fed to what? What? Like say, have you ever visited any process plant? How many of you ever visited any process plant? Okay, so you know that what is the processes and all. It may not be a continuous flow analysis. Okay, then what do you do? That means the temperature, define electrodes, discharge. Then initially, you get few samples, and these samples are sent to the laboratory. Then you say yes, it's fine, the grade you can maintain. Then you go ahead producing 1 heat. Okay, and then you go for the molten metal comes, and then you go for casting, and you get the materials, send it. Okay, so so the material processing here. So what are the environment related factors you need to identify? Then the product design and manufacturing. This is another issue. The material should be used either in the same place or at a different place. Maybe the resource extraction itself is it's a factory. Material processing could be a separate factory or your own plant, another plant they do. And next comes the product design and manufacturing part. So here what are the issues? That means first is you start using the product. That means the product is already made. Now collection, so during the product use, so the recycling, which is possible or not, reuse is possible or not, remanufacturing is possible or not, renew is possible or not. Okay, so this way, and composting is possible or not. Is it okay? Composting total together, something like this. Getting my point? So this is a general framework. So you must have this general framework in mind. Okay. So this is the sustainability framework. That means the principles of reuse, remanufacturing, recycling, renew, composting you use. As far as recycling is concerned, so one phenomenon is recycling with respect to a given process, right? Now in certain, first you identify that out of these processes, this many processes, there is no recycling phenomenon. First you identify them, that out of n number of processes under your command, let's say m number of processes do not have any recycling phenomenon. Identify them first. And some of the processes, okay, this is a partially recycling, okay, they have just started, and some few may have a full-fledged recycling process. You have to identify them, categorize them. So as far as recycling is concerned, recycling target rate efficiency, recycling percentage of non-renewable resources, that is most important in fact. Recycling percentage for renewable resources, recycling percentage of packaging material, number of non-recyclable material used for production, you have to name them, specification with their specifications, types and all. There must not be any vagueness. Okay. Number of recycling scheme taken by the organization every year. That means you should be aware of your expertise, the designers or the process engineers. They should be aware of that how many what is available in recycling. Is it okay depending on the type of material? Let there be a thorough study, a literature review. Okay, like many companies, they have their own library, isn't it? Without this library, how can develop your knowledge? Many companies you will find, right? Lots of like say company catalogs, not only company catalogs, standard industrial classifications. There are many such documents they keep, including the textbooks, including the research papers. Is it okay? Like say suppose your product is circuit breaker, air circuit breaker. Is it okay? So you must have thorough knowledge. Your R&D cell must work on vacuum technology. Is it okay? So there are companies, they have their own R&D and they are working the R&D, many scientists. Okay, they are writing high class research papers. Okay, so you must similarly for the recycling. So you first must know, right, that what are the companies, which are those companies where they have extensively used and they have done research on recycling aspects. Okay, so let it be known first. Who are the number one as far as recycling is concerned? Get the details and then you say that okay, this is a problem, so to what extent you can apply this recycling concept for your process. Okay. Similarly for the reuse percentage of raw materials, percentage of direct energy reused, energy loss, energy reuse ratio, quantity of plastic material reused and the quantity of packaging material reused. So do you have with you any such data, any ideas about reuse or recycling? You might have got this information from different sources. Have you noted them down in your diary? It's very, very important. Okay, you never know. Today, suppose some the data got it, just write it down. Then only in course of time, okay, your vision will change, your mindset will change. Okay, so it doesn't happen automatically or suddenly. You're getting my point. Remanufacturing part. This we have already highlighted, this particular term, remanufacturability. First, you check. Percentage of products remanufactured. Can you name any company where the remanufacturing is right? Can you name any Indian company? Or the big shots or even SMEs? I don't know. Try to find out. Make an internet search. Okay, it's very valuable, very important in fact. Make an internet search, get the details. Okay, Google. Okay, it's like encyclopedia. Percentage of remanufactured products going to market is a success case. Then percentage of products coming without having any defect. It's clear, there is a challenge. Remanufacturing cost and versus the manufacturing cost. Getting my point? This is a very important issue for obvious reasons. Okay. Percentage of products coming out as defective after remanufacturing. When it's a learning exercise, first time when you take up this one, is obviously it cannot be 100% foolproof. So it takes time, right? And that's why initially the percentage of products coming out as defective after remanufacturing, this assessment has to be there, and then you go for the improvement. Okay. Then next one is the renew. Total renew opportunity amount, renew opportunity cost, adds ratio, proportion of renewable from unexpected source. Waste produced per unit of product. This is for the waste and composting. Waste produced per unit of product. Hazardous waste, non-hazardous waste ratio. You have to declare it. Is it okay? So these are the materials. These are considered hazard. There must be a document. And why do you call it a hazard? What is the definition of hazard? You just get me the definition of hazard. There is a definition. Okay. So you go by absolutely textbook definition. Okay. Recyclable, non-recyclable waste ratio. Right. It's getting this data problematic. It's not that easy. Total energy waste per unit of time. Okay. How do you the measure is waste? What is the measuring unit? Percentage of hazardous waste directly released to the soil. Soil, as I have told you now, that first is air pollution, second one is water contamination, third one is land degradation, land, part of the nature. Fourth one is flora and fauna, right? And the last one is your health, the human health. That's it, occupational health. Percentage of hazardous waste directly released to soil, percentage of hazardous waste directly released to the air. There are many kinds of dust, fumes and all others. Okay. Percentage of hazardous waste stored inside the plant, stored inside the plant. And when you talk about the storing, there could be open store, there is a closed store. Right. Now whether you will prefer, suppose it is unavoidable in many cases. What do you try to do? That means where to locate the store, an open store. Will you keep it in the open store or the closed store? That you have to decide. It's clear. Now the life cycle assessment, right? Impact analysis to make process more sustainable and more environmental friendly. That is the objective. This is again elaboration. Okay, we sometimes what we do, we repeat the same thing. Okay, my professor used to, when he used to describe, like refrigeration and air conditioning, right? Whatever may be his topic of discussion, obviously there are many topics. So the first thing, what he used to do, he used to go to the board and used to draw the Bell-Coleman cycle, right? Every day, every lecture. So one day we asked him, sir, we know Bell-Coleman cycle, right? So that why you are repeating every day? Then he makes a statement. He says, yes, today you are, you are studying refrigeration, air conditioning. After a few years, you may forget, right, the many other topics related to refrigeration for obvious reasons, because you will be working on some other areas as an engineer. But the Bell-Coleman cycle, right, you never forget. Are you getting my point? That is the base. Is it okay? So at least from any subject, the core things you must have in your mind, you will never forget. That's why in many lecture sessions you will find, particularly for the training courses, right, we repeat we definitely, it is required, it is needed that the basics are always should be repeated always, so that it's like overlearning, you never forget. Is it okay? This is a must. It's quite natural that you might forget, but when it is repeated, you'll never forget. So the impact and assessment, for each factor 5 classes have been identified, and for each class corresponding score has been given. The factors are this one: area of effect, area of effect. Is it okay? Which area the effect is there? Is it okay? Like say the air pollution. This is the issue. So you have to identify out of say 100 such areas or 200 areas, the locations, which area are affected. Okay. Then severity of the effect, severity. Frequency of incident, frequency of incident. Okay, depending on the production rate, process rate, whatever. Time duration of incident, time duration. Cost of mitigating impact, means solving the problem. Cost of mitigating the impact. Effect of change on other activities, change on other activities, indirect effect on others. Concern of interested parties and stakeholders. Ease of change for changing existing approaches. Ease of change for changing existing approaches. Try to understand this part. Okay. So now what is the score? Score is multiplicative course. The starting point. And whenever you say that it's a multiplicative model, obviously it has to be an empirical study. Multiplicative model you cannot generalize. You can have just a general expression. Exact expression you cannot get unless you go in the field and collect data and you start analyzing the data. So it's a database modeling, scoring. So now, so this is just a scheme like area of effects is a scaling you have. Okay, mostly the subjective factors, and you must use a scale. So it's a 5-point scale. So you need to define each scale value in specific terms. This is my definition, and you say for this given particular area, this is applicable, right? It's not that in other area, same concept you have to apply, but you have to define it, you have to write it in a differently. Is it okay? So very localized effects, very localized, you have to define it. If someone says, sir, very localized, how do you define it? Is it okay? So you take a piece of paper and you start analyzing, say this area. You mention this area, so the 10 square feet or say 100 square feet. Getting my point? The area, it could be a volume also. Is it okay? So very localized effects, departmental area wise effect, departmental area wise effect, entire work is affected. Air pollution, no boundary line. It's clear. Then surrounding locality is affected. That means now we have gone out, right? Extreme cases you know, like Chernobyl, right, is concerning accidents only, or the Bhopal, you know. Getting my point? But those are accidents, okay, a 3-mile island, right? There are many such cases in fact. Widespread area is affected, widespread area, first. Second one is severity of the effects. So how do you define it? Insignificant effects. What is insignificant? That you have to define in a given context. This is just the guideline sort of thing. Is it okay? Momentarily significant effect. When suddenly it happens, it goes away again. Momentarily. Is it okay? Entire work is affected. Surrounding locality is affected. And widespread area is affected. So you have to define what is a widespread. It's clear. Otherwise, no. Someone says, hey, it's not widespread. So, here the intervention of the regulating authority, okay, plays a very important role. Otherwise, no, everyone will be defining all these their own advantages. Getting my point? Okay. So, that is why without the government say intervention, this sort of study, okay, so the data you may collect, but then it will be interpreted differently. Very sensitive issue. So, without the government regulation imposed, a direct intervention and third party authorities, okay, intervention, this exercise, okay, may lead to some misleading conclusion. Okay. Frequency of, so it must not be the domain. There are many experts and the private sector cannot be. And the state is created for what? Can you think of that without the government can you exist? What will happen? So, the private definitely will allow, but within a limited zone. As soon as it becomes a government, the environmental issues, so the government has to come. Getting my point? Otherwise, don't call it a government. Okay, governing what? So, this is one area. Frequency of impact once a month, once a week, once a day, right? This is just a guideline, several times a day and continuously occurring incidents. It's clear. When the leakage takes place, is it okay? Leakage is a very serious incident, in fact, the leakage. Okay. A poisonous gas, right? Duration of impact, momentary effect, then impact for 2 hours. See the classification, 2 hours. Impact remains a full day. Full day means 24 hours, but suppose you say a 2-shift operation, that means for 16 hours consecutive 2. So, the day is to be defined in terms of the hours. Impact lasts for a month. Impact remains permanent on environment. Is it okay? This is just a scheme. Next one is cost of mitigating impact, like the density, no cost, very minor cost, less than 1% of the project, medium cost 10% of the project, less than 10%, major cost up to 20% of the project, and the reinstallation of the machine. Is it okay? So, the cost of mitigating impact, that means you are solving the problems of impact, right? Effect of change on other activities, that means this is the density score, what is the level, right? Then the no change, only related components need to be modified in the same group. Here what is important is, I will tell you, you are dealing with a very complex issue. So, normally involvement of the experts, and these experts you draw from your own organization, from different disciplines. We have carried out a lot of exercises on this, like we have taken up say consulting assignment. The problems are like say problems are related to ore loss. It's a very complex problem. So, the people within the plant, they are handling the problems. So, there are obviously there is expertise existing. So, how to get their involvement, expertise involvement. So, always what we do, we conduct the brainstorming session. Okay, it's basically called nominal group technique, NGT session. Is it okay? The experts are drawn, and there will be conductor of the program. Is it okay? And the questions will be asked, okay, in a typical format. Solution will be asked, okay, for different problems. They will be asked to identify the problems. You make a list of the problems, and then individual opinion as the suggestions for solving the problem. Okay. So, this will be collected, from everyone within a fixed time period, say half an hour or so. Never you say, sir, I will give it, after I will go back. Sir, after 1 week I will send that response. Just don't call it a brainstorming session. Within a fixed duration, you work most efficiently. Like when we conduct an examination, okay, we say it's 2 hours or 3 hours. If you say, sir, I am giving you the question, so why don't you give me the answer after say 1 week? Invariably you will find that those who are answering after 1 week, that the quality of answer will be poorer than the persons who are giving you the answer with a fixed time period. Because when the time is restricted, your brain has been working most efficiently. Unless some forces are given, okay, you say, Arey, take it easily. I'll think. Today you go elsewhere, right? We'll enjoy. Maybe towards the end, the Saturday. This way 5 days go. And Saturday, Arey, the next Monday, early morning I have to submit. Somehow you try to manage. The quality of the answer will be extremely poor. Getting my point? So that's why you conduct the NDT sessions. How do you conduct and all those? Okay. And you will get the best possible response on all this. Getting my point? So first you give a structure like this one, and then you conduct a brainstorming session. So obviously, the kinds of solution you will get, okay, it's the best possible one. Concern of interested parties and stakeholders. So the percentage of parties agreed, that is the score, less than 20%, 20 to 40%, like this, 100%. Okay, this is also very, very important, in fact, concerns. Right? Make a survey, get this data. Then effect of change of existing approaches. So the no change can be done online without hampering the system. Like these days, the data management system is almost online, computerized. Previously it was not so. It was absolutely manual. Okay, so the online changes were not possible. So today you are in an advantageous positions. Initially you start with a simple or approximate database, right? Approximate the structure. As the new situation comes in, so you start changing on your own. Okay. Group is hampered for a few hours, and entire group is hampered for 1 to 3 days. This way you mention, and whole system is hampered. Okay, the score. Right? So this way, just I am proposing one particular scheme, right? You start with a very simple one, but get into the details. Don't bother about the mathematical modeling or optimization at this stage. You try to capture, okay, as many important factors as possible. And even, the root cause, the effect analysis will be very helpful. Root cause effect analysis. Okay. So, like a cause and effect diagram, let it be drawn. And for the process analysis, is it okay? That way you can draw, and then you start working on it. Okay. So now in the next 15 to 20 minutes of time, let me just highlight this particular issue. The time is very short. Is a case in the green manufacturing and green supply chain management. Empirical research on Indian SMEs. So, Indian SMEs are in a different plane. In many cases, their voices are never heard. Okay. And a few typical problems, almost all the SMEs they face, the general problems. And it will be really a challenging exercise if you can implement the environmental management system in SMEs. Now, SMEs are also have been classified. Like we have the industry classification, same, right? So, you just get into the details, 9 or 7 or 10 classifications they have, and so each the class of SMEs, okay, has its own problem, its own distinctive style, its own strength, okay, and there are some common problems, there are some specific problems. You should be aware of first. Get into the details. Okay. So, what is their how do you define SMEs? What is the definition? What is their what are the products? What are their strengths? Whether they have the design capability or not? What kind of say the assets they have, physical assets, particularly the the capital equipment and all, right? And what are the kinds of problems they are facing, okay, right now, or already reported, okay, with respect to the safety, with respect to say occupational health, with respect to the environmental management. These are all properly documented. Thoroughly you study, then identify. Then what do? You identify just one particular domain. Is it okay? And you select that domain. So, whenever you carry out such an empirical study for Indian SMEs, objectives could be like this: to understand the state of environmental practices and performance. Is it okay? That is the present state. You must know. You must make a visit. Is it okay? And normally what happens in a particular area, okay, lot many SMEs, their plants are located. Not only today, for maybe for the last 50, 60 years. Is it okay? So, almost around a particular city or within the city, right, always you will find in Indian context large number of SMEs located. Is it okay? Employing in certain cases maybe 10 persons, maybe in certain cases 50 persons, maybe in certain cases 100 persons, like this. Is it okay? And essentially they are becoming a partner to some major company. Getting my point? Is it okay? So, they are acting as a supplier. So, it is a part of the supplier base. Okay. To understand the state of the environmental practices and performances, to understand the state of Indian SMEs. Now, if you say Indian SMEs, is very difficult. Okay, is a as if you say Indian, so it could be various types of systems, right? So, it's better that you select a sample of SMEs always. Okay. So, don't say that my study or the results are applicable for the entire Indian SMEs. No. So, you say that for a particular group of SMEs, right, and I have taken this sample, right, and for the population of this particular SMEs in a particular domain, my studies are relevant. Is it okay? So, whatever the conclusions you draw, obviously there is always statistical basis. That means what is your level of significance and the confidence level you must be able to specify. Is it okay? Because you are drawing conclusion about the population, getting the data from a sample, and this sample is a representative of the population. But representative not in full sense is not possible. So, only with respect to certain criteria, you say this is representative. Is it okay? So, obviously, there cannot be whatever the conclusions you draw, it cannot be the error free. Statistical analysis you do, obviously the confidence level as well as the level of significance you must declare, you must specify. To understand the state of the Indian SMEs, to develop customized environmental management framework for Indian SMEs. So, important factors to be considered: first is the types of business, products and services, inputs and the raw materials. What are the inputs? What are the raw materials you should be aware of? And the conversion technology. Like we say that essentially the process means, the conversion process, the transformation process. It's clear. So obviously the technology plays a role. So what kind of technologies you have? So do you know the classification of technology? Just to find out. How do you classify the technology? How do you classify? So just to get this information. Okay, this is very, very important in fact. And we assume that whatever the technology you use, you say it is appropriate technology. How do you define that the technology is appropriate? From the two perspectives. One is the life cycle costing perspective, you can say, right? When the long term or harmful side effects, this is one. And so this is so from the two perspectives you can say that this is a say the appropriate technology. Obviously the environmental impact, short term as well as the long term, you need to consider, and then you say yes, it is appropriate. But appropriate for how many years? The time period has to be mentioned, right? So nothing is permanently permanent. So you say yes, I will again review the scenario. The review has to be whether once a year or once in 2 years. So it is to be constantly reviewed. Is it okay? Right. And the maintenance of the system is very, very important. Replacement is also required. Is it okay? Maintenance plays a very important role. Once the system starts failure, and suppose your repair work is not of quality one, or your maintenance is neglected, very soon you will find there are cases also that today it is appropriate. The other companies have been using and they say it is appropriate technology as far as environmental impact is concerned, fine. Others are running, but you say yes, it should be backed up with appropriate maintenance system. Is it okay? So if your maintenance quality is poor, right? So today you may find this is appropriate, tomorrow you may find it is not appropriate, creating a lot of wastes and all. Fine. So it is a total systems approach you have to adopt. Now what are the environmental performance indicators we used? One is environmental condition indicators, operational performance indicator, management performance indicators. These are 3 levels we do. So the environmental management accounting, financial and non-financial indicators. So these are the issues. So what are the environmental performance indicators? They measure the current or the past environmental performance, past, of an organization and compare it to the targets set by the organization's management. Can you set the targets? Right. What is the basis, or how do you set the targets? The important uses are the monitor compliance with the environmental policies and regulation. Sometimes, is it okay? The standards are specified to motivate continuous improvement, to provide data for internal decision making. These are all general terms I have used, I have written. To provide data for external reporting. Is it okay? Periodically you have to do. What are the environmental condition indicators? They are defined as specific expressions that provide information about the local, regional, national or the global condition of the environment. Getting my point? Those measures include receptor indicators, ecotoxicity, biological oxygen demand, chemical oxygen demand, etc. Okay. Then sustainability indicators, emission of a substance per volume of production or per unit of value added. This is the standard I am telling you. Proxy CIs, that means basically the surrogate measures. Indicators that express emissions and waste data in terms of their capacity to cause environmental damage. Okay. So, many a time you may have to use the so called surrogate measures. Operational performance indicators, they provide information about the environmental performance of an organizational operations, right. So, suppose it is a milling operation or say pre-treatment or the painting operations, painting both. So, they include inputs of materials, energy and services, operation of facilities of equipments and logistics, output of products, services, wastes and emissions. Okay. Then management performance indicators, what are those? Implementation of policies and programs. So, management what you can say that management prerogative. Conformity of actions with requirements or expectations, level of conformance or non-conformance, community relations and environment related financial performance. Environmental related financial performance. You are aware of financial ratios? There are lot many financial ratios. Like suppose acid test ratio I say, okay, or inventory turnover ratio, okay, or a current ratio. There are many such ratios you have, and normally these ratios you form from two specific documents. One is the profit and loss statement, yearly you produce, and the other one is balance sheet. Balance sheet at instant of time as on, and the profit and loss of period of time for 6 months or 1 year. Is it okay? So, you bring the information or the data from these two documents, and you form a set of financial ratios. Okay. So, there are certain ratios like say acid test ratio, okay, which is related to the inventory, right. So, whether without disturbing say the inventory level, whether you can assure your financial performance or not. Is it okay? So, now is the inventory part, the resources, the assets, right, of different types. Whether it is the WIP inventory, raw materials inventory, finished goods inventory, okay, the spare parts, okay. So, so that is the materials related, okay, environmental problems you should be aware of. So, similarly operations related. So, you say the cost is increasing or cost is decreasing. Now, you have to check that whether the environment you are creating, yesterday there is one quality of environment, today you are getting a different quality of environment. Is it okay? Not the same. So, whether this change in the quality of environment affecting those values or not. So, obviously, it all depends on to what extent your information system is reliable. There is a physical flow and there is a cost flow. There is a book value, you are aware of the book value and the actual value. So, the periodically what you have to do, you have to adjust. That means the physical stock checking is done. It's a rigorous exercise. Is it okay? You have to declare 3 or 4 times. This is the actual one and this is the difference, and accordingly in the account books you have to adjust this process. All the companies they do. Now, while you go for physical stock checking, it's all likelihood that you may become aware of the environmental problems. It's clear. Okay. So, why don't you, when you yesterday we used to do the physical stock checking. Today, when you go for physical stock checking, you give clear-cut instruction to the persons who are directly involved that you report the environmental problems related to material storage, material transfer. Is it okay? Or say, the material, the stocking over, or the material, the packaging, or whatever the problems you face, or they are reporting, the persons who are directly involved, they should be, this data you just collect. Is it okay? Yesterday it was not there. Today, why don't you introduce it? Is it okay? So, this way you do. And then the environmental management accounting, defined as the management of environmental and economic performance through the development and implementation of appropriate environment related accounting systems and practices. So, just you find out in the company or the organization which believes in this concept, okay, and implementing this concept, environment related accounting systems. Can you name? So, tomorrow suppose I ask you this question, have you found out any company which believes in this kind of accounting system? These are the starting one. While this may include reporting and auditing, in some companies EMA typically involves life cycle costing, full cost accounting, benefits. Suppose sometimes what happen, any costing method, that's I am telling you, obviously it is subject to error. So, on certain, but still there are exact methods, specific costing, they say, the specific costing. That means out of many products, out of many processes, for certain products or certain processes which are considered very, very critical from the environmental point of view, what do you need to do? You need to propose based on whatever the data you collect, database system, that is called basically the specific costing, almost error free, that you have to do. Otherwise, typical the valuation of inventory is a FIFO, LIFO, average method, or say moving average or the weighted average, whatever you follow, right. So, this problem may not be highlighted, but when you go for actual costing, including life cycle costing, there is another dimension. Here you have to consider the environmental related factors. Financial, non-financial accounting. So, these materials are with you. These materials are with you. Okay. Huh?
These slides are not there.
It's not there? How come? I don't know. So, anyway, you can take this one. Okay. The soft copy you can take, right? And the process details of Indian SMEs, these details are here. It's a case study. So, conversion technology of textile industry. Okay. So, this is the textile one. All these details are here. Conversion technology of food industry, right? You must know the conversion one. Conversion technology of foundry. These are all SMEs. Conversion technology of machining industry. This is the starting point, right? All these details you will find here. Like for the food industry, mixing, mechanical stirring, canning, baking, cooling, cutting, packing. Like for the conversion technology of machining industry, like forced and proof machine, bar, turning, keyway, teeth thread cutting, heat treatment, grinding, assembling, few operations, right. And what do you find in many cases, the second and third hand machineries they have been using. That itself is a reuse concept in manufacturing. It is there in our system. In Indian system it is there. We never throw anything. Getting my point? Even the kinds of the personal life you lead, you will find, okay, so the long tradition, why don't you reuse it? Getting my point? So, this is there, and particularly when you visit SMEs, this sort of the characteristics you come across, everyone, right? Because the resource is scarce, don't waste it, right? Even if you say waste, can it be reused? Automatically it comes, okay. So, the value chain of Indian SMEs, next value chain. So, the cotton growing is just one example. all these details we have. The lunchtime is approaching. We are making, we are becoming hungry. And I always say the hungry stomach cannot think. Whoever you are, whatever you do, I always quote. Okay, whose quote? This one? Like I'll quote one. Whoever you are, whatever you do, first feed your face, then talk right or wrong. Then the next line is, for even the saintliest of the folk may act like sinners unless they have had their customary dinners. So it is the breast, I am quoting breast in 3 Pies opera. Right? It's okay. So bear with the next few minutes of time. So then you go for the lunch. So these are all details. Here the retailers are there, wholesalers are there. There is okay. Then the garment importers are there, garments. The retailers, consumers at different levels. So this is called value chain. So you have to draw the value chain mapping. You have to draw, and this is the value chain of foundry. This is another case. Started with this one. All the details are mentioned. Okay, in monetary terms. Like, so the raw materials, rupees 15 per kg. Like molten metal, rupees 19 per kg. Okay, so these estimates you must have, right? So ultimately the market price for local traders, Bada Bazar, rupees 27 per kg. Is it okay? So you come across, obviously when you deal with SMEs, the local, the terms, right? You frequently come across, nothing harm. Instead of, suppose I say English words, you say, great. Why don't you use the local language? What is the problem? Anyway, so that sort of situation, it's a typical, it's an Indian situation, the local environment you find. There is a very good advantage, I am telling you. You can communicate with your own language and all. Many problems, the communication skill you can show very easily, isn't it? So awareness regarding quality of products and services, this is one, SMEs, these are all points Indian. So what we have observed, Indian SMEs are aware of the quality of products and services and their implications, they are aware of. All the workers, they are aware. But even though a number of SMEs are moving towards better environmental performance, they are limited from taking action. They are unable. One of the major obstacles is the limited financial resources of SMEs. Is almost hand to mouth situation. Since the majority of the SME sector is pursuing a survival business strategy, future is unknown. Really the problem under uncertainty. Investment capital for major process improvement is an issue of concern since accessibility to financial resources is a major problem for a number of SMEs as they tend to lack self-capacity to attract funding from local, regional and national financial institutions, their financial strength. Okay. So like there will be loan capital, obviously there will be loan capital and there will be say from the equities or say what you can say like from the say the profit and loss statements, say retained earnings. So one part is the retained earning. And the second part is definitely the loan capital. But if you have the loan capital, the corresponding, the interests will charge. Is it okay? So this may be a burden to many SMEs. So there must be the special, the investment scheme for them from the financial institutions. Then based on the questionnaire, the following things have been found, questionnaire survey. Indian SMEs are not very much aware about the climate change issues, okay, by their business activities. They are not aware climate change. That is expected, obviously, right? Even at the experts level, the climate change, okay, is interpreted in many ways. In fact, okay, how can you expect that the people down the level in the almost the lower strata of the society, how can we expect that they will be, discussing about the impact of ozone layer and all those other things, climate changes? So it is our duty to make them understand. Okay. And while we communicate, you must be able to use their language. Is it okay? That's the way everywhere it is done. So, lack of knowledge is very important factor. Most of the SMEs do not know how to control the greenhouse gas emission. Are you aware of greenhouse gas emission? So, note down greenhouse gas emission. What is greenhouse gas? Any environmental study, this will come, greenhouse gas. Most of the SMEs do not use galloping gadget and other pollution control devices. So, in the most cases there are no environmental personnel in the SMEs to undertake related tasks effectively. Adoption of full scale EMS such as the ISO 14001 model or the installation of pollution abatement technologies seem to be too costly for SMEs. They are aware, but it is very expensive for them. The majority of SMEs is relying on outdated technologies that cause pollution and are inefficient in production. Is it okay? Now, there could be a direct relationship between efficiency and pollution. More you produce, more you waste generate. Is it okay? So, this is also to be defined very scientifically, right? Inappropriate pollution abatement technologies result in inefficiency in pollution treatment. That's it. So, based on the questionnaires, the following things have been found. Linkages among agencies involved with the SME's development have not been strengthened. Even though there has been a number of organizations that support the SME's development, including academic and financial institutions and NGOs, the development goals tend to be haphazard since the network of major governmental agencies and other organizations have not been strengthened. This was the scenario. The international support for SMEs development cannot reach local SMEs effectively. Then there is the policies one. So, implementation for the implementation part, implementation of the legislation must be effective. Then adequate information for better technological options for the SMEs is very much required, right. So, what do we believe in? There is a lot of scope for research and they need our support. Okay. And as you know that almost 80% of of our say employment do come from SMEs. It's clear. So, it has got a social relevance, highly social relevance, right, highly for our country. And examples, these are the key problem. Most of the textiles do not perform wastewater treatment. This is one observation. Heat treatment plant is a major source of pollution. Anywhere you go, you will find. At the time of carburizing, methanol, acetone and other vapors are produced. Quenching oil vapor is also a source of pollution. Scrapyard is not very much concerned about how to handle scraps. Clear? Most of the foundries do not have sand recycling plant. Casting is also another major source of pollution. That's why I told you that go and visit the process plant, go and visit mining industries, go underground. The extreme cases should be aware of, right? And then when you come overground, you assess that to what extent our knowledge is inadequate. There are many kinds of unsolvable problems, but you should be aware of, right? So, the casting is also another major source of pollution and casting sections need to be shifted to the casting zone. Okay. So, ways to improve environmental performance to achieve sustainable awareness raising is very much important. Awareness part, you remember that is the first part, awareness, measurement, evaluation, okay, planning, improvement, control. So, the awareness. SMEs function in a business as usual mode, earning money. At what cost? Who bothers? Right. You bother about today. Don't bother about tomorrow. Let tomorrow come. The sun may not rise. So sun may set today. So wait. If the sun rises, then we will start working. Getting my point? So they are not fully aware of the emergence of a new business environment. For example, non-tariff barriers, new trade and technology. This has to be changed. They are not aware of. Getting my point? Lack of trained and qualified human resources is another barrier that requires improvement. This is true as far as environment is concerned, not only for SMEs, but even for the big industries, everywhere. That is called critical mass is absent. You make a survey, you will find the critical mass even in a large steel plant, integrated steel plant. So modern technologies are to be used and all these details are here. So R&D activities are limited. There is hardly any R&D activities. Okay, the person concerned, the owner of the plant or the company, he is having some, at personal level, he has some connections with some European companies, okay, at his own level. But he is not creating a system. His son or daughter will take over. And then obviously, the system, if you cannot create the system, how long you can pull on? You cannot. Getting my point? So this is the system. So this inhibits innovative improvement within the sector. Thank you. Okay. So there are many. So now you have understood that how complex the problem is.